All right, go for it.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. No matter where in the heck in the world you are, this is a man who needs no introduction. It's my buddy W. Some of you might know him as Juan07. That was a name that him and I were kicking around years and years and years ago. I'm not gonna. I won't tell you the origin of that name, nor will he. But anyway, W is here, aka Juan. And with that being said, W, I have a hard time calling you Juan, bro. I'm just gonna call you W. W, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Well, actually, there's a lot of people that even in my inner circle that have only known me by that name for, over 40 years. So it's
Juan
not
name?
that, yeah. Well, it's my number, and
yeah,
so,
I know. I know. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the details of the origin of that. Unless you wanted to, but that's
well, no,
entirely
I
up
mean,
to you.
I think it's out there a little bit, but that was my number, and I, pretty proud of it, and it was also something that I had that I used during some of the stuff that I did during a particular era of my life. So, and of course, I've written quite a few articles under that name, and that's been around for quite a long time. So, any of the editing or proofs and manuscripts that I also did back in the 90s, that was the number that I used in my editing. So that was a something that I have a lot of use of, and there's a lot of people that wouldn't even think of me as anybody else but Juan. So I've answered that for a very long time.
Okay, cool. Here I was thinking I was special.
Well, yeah, there's a lot more there. Someday I'll probably talk more about that. I don't plan on doing that anytime soon, but
Yeah.
it's a fun conversation, and so there's, yeah. Anyway, so on to the various things. I know everybody's on pins and needles what's going to happen next, and what's the next turn and bend and twist in the road. And in large measure, obviously, it's a bit of a waiting game as we work through. There's some stuff going on in the background that's a lot bigger than I think most people can even begin to comprehend, really. The economy, even in this shutdown mode, what do you do, V, if you have a virus in your computer and you run a virus program to locate all the viruses and capture them, stop them? What do you do when you've caught the virus with the virus program?
What do you do when you catch the virus with the virus program? Well,
What's the last thing you do?
the last thing you'd want to do is take some hydroxychloroquine and cure it, which is proving
That you're guilty.
that you're guilty.
Yeah, Hillary. Clorox bleach bit. No. You do a shutdown of the computer and reboot it. You reboot the program with the virus eliminated. And so there's a lot of layers to this. When you look at what's had to happen in the country, we've identified where it's coming from and all the potential ways it works, all the various avenues in. We actually have a very good track on what's going on with the virus and methods to treat people with it that, can have outstanding success. It isn't, viruses are hard to go at naturally, but indirectly, where it has an effect, the way that it works, you can affect the immune system and in this case, the blood itself, and then its susceptibility goes down to next to nothing. So your immune system can actually work. So we've got a really good track on it, and everybody out in the audience is kind of aware of that. The president certainly has had having his news conference the other day with people that had the virus and survived and went through the treatment, and he wasn't afraid to be in the same room with them. Oh, he's old and he's very fragile. Okay, well, he didn't look like he was too stressed to me. So what's the rest of the story with what's going on right now? The economy, on the way it works, you've got a bunch of people out there right now. And one of the things that's going around that's actually very disturbing is all these people talking about how Trump's in with the bad guys and he's sold out, or he's under control of FEMA or these other agencies, and he's scared looking, and they've got him. It's like we were talking about something where somebody had decided that, if I didn't do what they were saying I had to do within 7 days, other people that have gone against him have dropped dead.
Oh, God.
God's got a hit on him. And so I've got, by the way, V, I've been told I need to get my life insurance and everything up because there's going to be a hit by God on me in 7 days.
Oh, my God.
We're like
7 days
on that. Yeah, I'm toast because I'm not doing what.
So you got 4 days left, huh?
Yeah. So, I'll be saying my prayer and having a scotch. Are
these the harrowing hags of?
No, I don't even want to get into too much of it, but the reality is.
Yeah, I know who it is. They are. Bunch of hacks, bunch of spiritual spooky nut jobs.
Yeah, I mean, you remember when they had the Ebola scare?
Oh yeah,
and I had basically gone contrary to what other people were saying and said, you're not understanding what's going on here. They're going to shut down the country, and within a month, half the population will be infected, and within 2 months, 9/10 of America will be dead, and no trucks will be moving, and it's going to be a ghost
literally
town.
Warning truck drivers not to drive into Texas. If you're a truck driver, don't drive into Texas.
Right.
You get Ebola.
So, all sorts of different spiritual leaders had visions from God that I was working for the bad guys.
Visions, my ass. Visions from their own rectum. That's what
right,
they had it.
Right. And so I'm have no clue what I'm talking about. It's all over. It's all over. And I says, bullshit. Everybody take a deep breath. You not understand what's going on here, and this isn't the time. And one of the things they said specifically is on the numbers, on their codes. They weren't coding that amongst themselves. Now, this one is different because on the numbers, this was a total attack, deep state attack, no question about it. But the administration saw it coming, had made some preparations, and then there's stuff that I'm sure we're going to get all sorts of great info over time on what transpired. But at the end of the day, it didn't turn out the way that the bad guys wanted. And I've spoken about 3/11 and 11/3 as dates that have been targeted for horrendous attacks, including 2 nuclear attacks. One on 3/11/1968 and one was on 11/3 of last year.
Right.
And I've done extensive programs, multiple locations on those. We've weathered all of this. And then this 3/11 attack with the corona. And thank God that we had President Trump and the people that are behind him in this administration that have done, just a unbelievably good job of keeping the country safe and on a decent track. What's the restart supposed to look like? Well, it'll obviously be paced in a lot of places, and it's going to move quickly. The president himself has said that It's going to be amazing how fast we bounce back as a country. But even that, there's a lot of questions about how that looks. For example, just because the market will be coming back doesn't mean I'd invest in the exact same companies.
W there? W there? Did we lose him? All right, just give it a few seconds, folks. All right, you're muted, bro. Unmute yourself. And there goes Senor 107, aka W. He will be back. During this time, guys, I want you guys to go to mycbdedibles.com, mycbdedibles.com for all your CBD deliciousness, whether it's chocolate, peanut butter, truffles, the almond, white chocolate yumminesses, whatever it is, doggy treats or coffee. Go there. MyCBDedibles.com, and also check out the Patreon. See, Patreon is the place to be for all things Gorilla, all things Unfiltered, all things Real Deal. Hey, and he's back.
All right.
W
Sorry
there.
about that. That was actually
no worries, man.
Yeah, that was actually my fault. I bumped one of the buttons here.
Be careful, brother.
So I apologize to everybody. Anyway, the deal is that with the way the market will come back, it is going to be certain stocks over others, and just have to use your good judgment to decide what companies in this reset are going to be favorable or favored. And I would say that companies that have a huge presence in China, companies that may have been on the doing favorably had the virus succeeded, maybe aren't going to do so favorably or have problems out in the future. And somebody sent me something, mentioned the other day that Jeff Bezos had made $26 billion during the crisis with, his broker had made a bunch of the right investments. I don't know if that's true or not. I just had heard that. And, but, as this thing turns around, I expect that probably will see some reversals of maybe not. Maybe all of his stuff, they made a bunch of money and it's all great. But I would certainly be looking at how do you reposition based on, the next 2-3 years, not even virus related, but what companies are way down low, but we're headed in a good direction. One of my close associates bought a bunch of stuff related to nanotech, and felt that was beat down very hard and has quite a bit of a future ahead of it. So he hadn't bought anything in that particular regard previously, and I had suggested a particular company. He went ahead and went that way. So, is the country not just going to recover, but where are those recoveries going to be? I think that part of this whole exercise has shown the need to bring especially certain types of manufacturing back home. One of the ones that's been just on the ropes for a very long time, it's been actually painful to watch, excruciatingly painful to watch from an internal side, is Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, oh
Lockheed
my God.
Martin, they've hired 160 employees in the last 2 weeks at Dallas-Fort Worth, and they have 600 more that they're trying to hire immediately. That's just one location. It doesn't mean it's company-wide, but it shows that there's things happening that are moving, expanding capabilities here. They're not done. And
I'd like to see Lockheed busted up, man. I mean, bring me back to the good old days when you had Lockheed, you had Northrop, you had Grumman, you had General Dynamics, you had Boeing,
Well, Loral.
Those are the good old days, man. I mean, we made airplanes back then, bro. Come on.
Well, and again, I think that you're going to see a lot of reset. A lot of smaller companies are going to suddenly start surging because of other technologies that are going to come to the fore. We're just think of what has happened with Coloquin in the way the world was working with the bureaucrats and the agencies cooperating with manufacturers to keep us locked into certain very expensive new protocols and drugs where they always make a gazillion dollars. Here we find a cure that's based on something that's been approved and in use for decades. And they want to fight against it. They want to push against it and everything else. And here it's this cheapo cure, costs pennies per dose, and under $1 or whatever per dose. And the drug companies, everybody else, hates it. Yep. They hate it. Well, I think that we're in a new era. Look at what's happened with oil. We had been systematically being closed off from our own oil domestically. Oil production, only production you could get to is super high cost, way deep out in the Gulfs. Only the biggest of the big companies could possibly go after it. And then, fracking in these very difficult areas to work, expensive. And even though, literally just a few hundred miles down the street, you got lignite oil that's practically oozing out of the ground, like Jed Clampett type situations, up high, easy to get at, flows wonderfully.
Easy to refine.
Easy to refine, and it's all locked up in strategic reserves. Yep. And from an era when we were running, ships that burn nothing but oil, for a military. Well, it's not as valuable as a strategic reserve right now, and we're changing tech. Oil 50 to 100 years from now will have a whole different value to us. Our need for it will be radically reduced with new technologies. Doesn't mean it'll be gone, because we'll still use it for other things. Right. But the reality is that we're shifting. We've wanted to shift for a long time, but we've been stopped from doing it. They act like, oh, no, we got to leave oil. And they do everything to keep you from being able to do it. Only you have to buy their oil that's extremely expensive. And offshore, for example, even the cheap oil that we're able to get offshore. Well, how cheap is cheap oil when you're having to use your Navy, Air Force, Army, Marines, and State Department and Federal Reserve money to keep it going, your whole political machine to keep it going? Shoot, that oil probably isn't costing anywhere near what you're being sold at a cost. It's costing, many dollars a barrel just for security costs and political costs, way more than it is here domestically. So what has the Trump administration done? The most, I think, beautiful, one of the most important things that the Trump administration has done is bring back domestic production. Yeah. Under the Obama administration, they just wiped out small producers, which are a huge part of oil production in the country. And these small producers, they're doing it in shallow wells. They're, very careful how they are for the communities and all sorts of things. And they just got wiped out. Wells got shut down. You don't just turn a well off, come back 5-10 years later and flip the switch back on, or even months later. The equipment has kind of a shelf life there. And the casings, etc. And so you leave it fallow. And then the other thing is, even with water incursion like that, there's all sorts of issues going on that make it so that, you don't just turn on a well like a light switch. People don't understand that. And so the things that they did just wiped guys out across the board. I had one of my friends, over his lifetime, he had developed over 100 wells personally. And because of the rule changes during the Obama administration, he was down to a half dozen working wells. And with costs, when you stop producing on a producing well has when you stop producing, you can't just walk away from it. You have to seal it off, and then there's a cost to close it off. And so, they essentially regulated him out, and then he's faced with all these huge costs. Here's a guy who's going to retire, is retired. He has some health issues, um, in very, very good shape. He spent his whole life planning, being set up, having it all working, a business plan. The whole schmear was really, really well off. Looking forward to giving lots to his church and things like that, and wipe out. And he's surviving, but certainly nothing like he would have been or was doing before because of these rule changes. And where was the production going? Offshore, other parts of the world. You remember, I think, too, when we had the Gulf crisis with the well down the Gulf of Mexico. All of the oil rigs had to stop. Where'd they go? They went down to do drilling off the coast of Brazil, 600 miles out in the ocean for George Soros.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That project went nowhere.
Now, they just drug all that stuff away, but then, all of his price stuff that they were expecting, oil at 200 a barrel and stuff like that, they weren't able to pull some of that stuff off. And that's the beauty of this administration. They've cut the crap, moved oil production back home. Going to continue to protect that, even though we have low oil prices. We're going to protect our pricing here at home and protect these producers at home. It's a little bit slow getting there right this second, but I'm very comfortable that that's going to happen here. I wouldn't come in looking for a killing in oil right now. If I was investing in something, because I think there's a lot of bloodletting still to do. But that's a market that is going to do just fine here on the domestic market. I feel very comfortable with that. We're not going to give away that producer status under this administration. And I expect them to get another term. And so I expect that to just get reinforced. Whoever the next person is, who knows? That's the big thing for us as a people right now, is to learn enough from this event, in this reset, in this reboot, so that we're not caught flat-footed with traitorous persons again. And I mean, I use that exact term, traitorous persons. The fact of the matter is that the truth comes out about what was being done against us. I'm not talking just in this moment. I've been saying this back to 2016, and even before Donald Trump announced that he was a candidate in the previous summer, when people were questioning if he was going to run, and you and I had some discussions, and there had even been requests if I wanted to help with the campaign or something. And the reality is that there has been traitors within our government working with foreign conspirators on foreign soil to affect our elections, to control our elections. And that's becoming more and more widely known. This crowd out of Cambridge, this British intel crowd, this crowd out of the city of London, where was the dossier created? Over in London. That's where the work was done. It may have been paid for by Perkins Coie, here, working for the Democratic Party, the law firm.
Yeah,
but
Hillary's specific firm.
Yeah, well, and of course, and who paid them? DNC. They were they paid the money, but the money that came from DNC in the first place. So, here, that stuff is going to come out. Those people that think that nothing's ever going to happen. I just had a conversation. It's been a running conversation for months with a person that a lot of people in this audience would know, who's a does a lot of broadcast stuff, and is in the media side of things, and pretty well known name, and um, he's been pretty uh, hesitant to commit in any way that anything's ever going to change. He's of the mind that, for example, the Q operation is almost certainly a LARP, that it's fooling people, and he's not going to get fooled again. That was his exact words, the other day. I had said, here a month or so ago, when he was ready to come out and do something. And I actually had another very, very well-known host nationally that was even going to do a op-ed saying that Trump was, crazy for shutting the country down and putting all these people out of work, and there's going to be starvation and everything else. And I told this person, I says, take a deep breath. Give it 30 days. I think you'll feel differently. Because you don't know all the facts yet. Don't tell me that you know as much as the president knows. He's not an idiot, and he's being advised by people right in there close to him. He's got a lot of information, even though a lot of it's misinformation, wrong information. He's got people in the wings there that are giving him pretty good information. And so I kind of lobbied for, don't do that. Don't stick your foot in it. I think he'd be embarrassed down the road as some of the truth comes out. And he decided not to. He, didn't do what he was going to do. The other person, same thing, 30 days. Well, the 15th, the 30 days was up. The one really big host said, yeah, I'm glad I stopped, because I do actually see that there's other stuff going on, and I'm just going to give the president room. And I was just being a little bit hot on it, but I'm going to let him have room to do what he's got to do without saying anything, critiquing it. The other one, quite a bit less known, but still somebody that most of this audience would know, was very much more so, no, I've had it. I'm done. I'm over with. I'm going to say what I got to say, because, this is crazy. And I think he's in on it. And I think Trump's part of the problem, and that he's working with the bad guys. And this is all a plan to take more power from the American people, a la 9/11, where our rights were taken with the Patriot Act and things like that, which was anything but, under this excuse that terrorists had attacked us. We weren't attacked by terrorists externally. We were attacked by terrorists within our own country, American citizens primarily, in black hats in positions of authority. So in a religious ritual, because 9/11 was a religious ritual.
Correct.
So with that in mind, we have this battle going on in the country, and even within your audience, a lot of people are, they're getting badgered because it's not happening fast enough. It's not happening like, people said, and so they've got certain expectations, and they're embarrassed, and they've gone out on a limb. The only thing I'll say is this. Even though I've speculated on dates and times that would work, I've always tried to say, don't bet the farm on it, but, here's why this would work. Here's what's the numbers here and there. The one thing that this administration is not, unlike this other faction that we're fighting, they're not slaves to the numbers. They're very aware of that, but they're not slaves to it. And they like to flip things around on their meaning. There's a fight, if you will, for the number 17. So Q and the Q team, Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. There's all sorts of rich meaning about 17 in this numbers war. And the other side, the Osiris Washington Monument, this phallic symbol of that we have, great big dildo planted right there at the center of our capital, that the whole capital's built around. Washington, D.C. is every bit as much a religious city as the Vatican. But the number of the Osiris monument, the big dick in the middle of Washington, D.C. is 17.
Yep.
Because Osiris was killed, chopped into 14 pieces.
Correct.
And the parts scattered over the world by his brother Set, because Osiris was so evil. And his mom went out, gathered all the pieces, Isis went out and gathered all the pieces, and but was only able to find 13 of the 14 pieces. The 14th was his penis, so she fashioned a penis out of stone and then had sex with the corpse and conceived a child, and that was Horus, and Horus is the rising sun. So we have a monument. The cross is the religious symbol to the church. The Washington Monument, this great big dildo penis in the middle of Washington, D.C., that's a religious symbol.
Correct.
In their religion. And
correct.
That's a great big, penis in the middle of Washington, D.C., a big fuck you to America.
Absolutely.
And that number is 17, because that's the death and resurrection date of Osiris. So 17 is a very important number to them.
Sure.
Q is the letter, 17th letter. So they put a big, huge Q over the Kennedy gravesite for President Kennedy. And that's like a tattoo, a boot stamp. We got you, and we're holding you in. And circles hold power for the occult, for witches, for warlocks, for wizardry. And so they put a big circle on it that's a Q. We did this, and you're not getting out. You're not going to reverse the effects of our coup. And so one of the interesting things in the Q drops that was done several days ago was that they had a picture, and it was like a movie billboard. And you go back, I don't remember the number, but it's like 20 ago at this point in time. And it shows President Trump on a red background, kind of mimicking the Hunt for Red October movie billboard. And he's surrounded by a big circle that's actually, if you look closely, it's a Q down in the corner. But juxtaposed to the president, of all the symbology you could use to symbolize the deep state,
sure,
who President Trump is opposed by, who he's at war with, what's the picture of? It's a picture of the Washington Monument. Why? Because that is symbolic. That is this symbolic meaning of this deep state religion cult that he is fighting, that is the deep state in America.
Correct.
This Osiris Monument. And so here it is, President Trump versus the Washington Monument. Both of them, if for those in the Q community that say, well, the president's actually Q. Why doesn't he just come out and say it? Why?
That's such an elementary.
Everybody knows he's Q.
That's just an elementary thing.
Okay. Why doesn't he say it? Why doesn't he just admit it? Just admit it. Oh my gosh. Some people have they do.
You know what people don't understand here, man? Look, it's like, that's why one of these days I got to have you on, and I got to have a good buddy of mine who is a top level field physicist, peer reviewed, published scientist named, he goes by the name Jet Blake. I got to have both you guys on at the same time. People do not understand the depth of what is being taken place here, because it is as much as a war against killing pedos and taking out the bad guys, so to speak. It is much as a war for symbols and counter symbols and signs and numbers and high geometry as it is for anything else. It's this battle is as above, so below, folks. In order for you to grasp the depth of this whole entire thing, as above, so below. It's moves and counter moves. It is layer upon layers. You sit there and you start to unravel this thing with your brain. Okay, literally. We're talking about multiple layers on multiple levels. And if you just see one or two things, you're looking at it from a myopic point of view, and you're going to miss it. You're going to miss the mathematical precision and the elaborate calculations that take place from one side to the other as the move and counter move happens. Go ahead, W.
Well, it's just that when you're trying to think, how are you going to do your investments? What are you going to put your money into? Um, in a generic sense, invest in America. You think we got wiped out? Look out across the rest of the world. What's really happening in this reset is that this administration is saying we're not going to let the politicians and the foreign traitorous business operations um, continue to transfer the productive capacity of America out into the rest of the world and make us pay for it. And we're not going to self regulate and tax to death so that you can't compete on a world stage. It's cheaper to buy goods overseas and ship them and get them here to the US and use them than it is to build it right here at home. Um, and especially with our technology, etc. No, many cases that's not true. It doesn't mean that we're moving the production of brooms back home necessarily, but even that, uh, you know, building this stuff offshore and shipping it in, and if we're going to do it, there's going to be some fair trade, and it doesn't matter if it's China or Guatemala. We're going to have fair trade, and people are going to have to figure that out. These NAFTA and things like that were, very one-sided and was done by a political class. It's a common theme. It's been going on in America for a very long time, where we were sold out, bought out with crooked politicians. The way that we got the Federal Reserve into existence was via some crooked politicians that got bought off by a banker class and got them to pass laws on Christmas Eve when everybody else had gone home. And we're left with this legacy, this Christmas Easter egg that we've paid with blood and lives for over a century with. And that's, coming to an end now. The president moved the supervision operation of the Federal Reserve under Secretary Mnuchin's authority over Treasury. And we're going to rein that in. That's about to end. And even that event, in fact, I talked about it on a podcast the other day about the Titanic. The Titanic was a planned event over at Patriot Productions. I think I'll shoot you a link, V, if you want to include it. People might want to go listen to that. But the long and short of it is that that was no accident. It was no more of an accident than 9/11 was, just a couple of terrorists out of the Mideast. Bullshit. It was a religious act there with the Twin Towers, breaking the veil between the towers, between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. All the other gods there present, ISIS, that we know is the Statue of Liberty out there in the harbor there, and you had all these other buildings that have religious significance that were witnesses. So when you consider that crowd is being damped down, their ability to control our country, our markets, our taxes, our money is being swept aside. That's the big thing that's happening in the background. What's that going to do for America? We're going to have a financial resurgence, low cost money, and it's going to stay that way. Strong dollar for purchasing power overseas and here at home, and rebuilding industry here in the U.S., just like seeing Lockheed Martin that's been on the ropes for, a very long time, decades really, getting worse with the bleed out. And they'll be, getting stronger, but you're also going to see a lot of the smaller subcontractors with real ideas, the technical version of a Coloquine, the drug, who suddenly, the restraints are off, and they're going to be able to bring ideas to the fore that they couldn't get traction with before, and suddenly, they're getting a break, they're getting a chance. because this administration is pro-U.S. business, and they're going to protect our ideas, our intellectual property, etc. We're not going to be sold out from under and have it be okay by our politicians. And I think that the other thing is those people that think that, nobody's going to jail, nobody's getting arrested, no matter how long it's taking. This is about checkpoints, not dates. It's like a launch for a rocket. You will have a 4-day launch cycle, and so when you do it, you might have 100-hour preparation. The rocket goes out to the pad. It gets all of the electrical hooked up. There's so many hours allotted for all of that to be hooked up, 20 hours, let's say. They'll have a 4-hour hold. Once it's confirmed, they change crews that have different stuff. They have maintenance people that come on to maintain the electrical side and monitor it. And now they're hooking up hydraulics. And if somebody's having a problem, a hose isn't fitting right, some screwy thing, if they get past their 20-hour prep window, they can go into that hold time, but that's built in as a buffer, and everybody comes to the rescue to help that one group that's got a problem, so that they can get the whole thing done. Then you come into other systems of various things that arm it, that allow it to explosive bolts, things like that. And last thing is fuels. You need things that are caustic, that not in there long term, or that degrade somewhat. And so you have holds between each of those subsets. In going through this process to get to arrest, let's say, for example, there's things that they want to accomplish before they switch into that mode. And so it's a checkpoint. Have all these things been accomplished? And they have options for dates, options for the manner that they want to do it, that send a message to the other side, because there is messaging going on all through here. And this administration has been very careful to hit the other side back on the numbers on their keister. And but they're not slaves to that. And they're more concerned about the checkpoints. And we're clearly getting closer to having checked all the boxes and then ready to move up into the next phase. And just as an aside, on the numbers, the Q posts are moving into the 4,000 series. 4 is the number of foundation. And so they've been racing through stuff. They kept lots of Q numbers for communications, and that they're racing now to 4,000, I would contest in part is because they had them there as options. They've got ways they could have used them, and they're pretty close to done with needing those options available. One interesting thing, by the way, I did this broadcast on the Titanic. It was 108 years ago this year that the Titanic was sunk in the North Pacific, with the men, the Americans, the patriots, who were very wealthy Americans who opposed the idea of a new Bank of the USA, a Federal Reserve run by private banksters. And so it was 108 years ago that they were murdered there in the North Atlantic. The Q operation and this presidency is really about reversing these coups against America that have been going on for a very long time. President Lincoln was killed April 14th. He was shot April 14th, 155 years ago in 1865. On April 14th, he died the next morning on the 15th. The Titanic, just like Abraham Lincoln, was part of this money war, because Lincoln had put in the greenback dollar, which wasn't backed by European money, gold. They wanted to charge him 24 to 36% interest. And he said, I'm not doing that. I'll just back it by the good faith and credit of the American people. And he didn't back it by gold or anything. Greenbacks, people that don't think that we can come out of this unless we back our dollar with gold immediately, and we don't have any. Excuse me? The greenback wasn't backed by gold. It was backed by the American taxpayer, by the American people. To be able to buy them back. It was worth more than gold 10 years after the war.
Exactly. And you know what people don't realize is this, a lot of the gold bugs don't realize this. Look, man, most of the gold bugs don't even work in the gold industry. That's a fact. Okay. And W, you met my good buddy and partner that I've worked with for over a decade. He's one of the top gold traders in the world. You've met him. And one of the things that I'll tell you guys straight up, when you look at the Roman Empire, right, the greatest time of Roman Empire's growth and economic prosperity, guess what their currency was backed by? Tin. It was backed by tin. And when they went on a gold standard, it absolutely decimated their economy. It's not what backs your economy, folks. It's who backs your economy. It's not what backs your currency. It's who backs your currency. That's the most important thing, because if it's not in the control of the people, look, let's be honest here. Most of these gold bugs scream for, I need gold. None of y'all have any gold. Just because you got a couple of ounces sitting in your vault, in your little safe, doesn't mean you're in any position. It's ridiculous. It's like people some people who, we want gold standard. Okay, how many ounces of gold do you have? 5. Come on, man. Come on. No, it's about who is controlling the currency is more important than what is backing it. Facts. Go ahead, W.
Well, and by the way, just as an aside, everybody's all gold, metals and everything else. When Christ was crucified and then put in the tomb, to prepare his body for the tomb and have it embalmed, etc., or to, covered in the cloths and anointed is the way they did it with preservatives. The person that came and took custody of Christ's body was his uncle, Joseph of Arimathea. And he was a very, very, very rich man. Well, if you go to other writings of the time, who is Joseph of Arimathea? He was literally one of the very wealthiest people in Rome. And what is it said about Joseph? Joseph was a tin man. He was the person that brought the tin by ship from what is now today England and down to Rome. And that was what was used as a basis for the currency. So he was a very wealthy man. And it wasn't based on gold and silver. It was based on tin, of all things. And it's used for strengthening metals and stuff like that. So, people, you get too locked in on just like you said, gold bug. Hey, I'd be metals in a more generic sense. And then, of course, how is it held? What form? Personally, I like silver that's already been minted, pre-64 coins, not for collector value, but just for the silver value, because it's recognized stuff. And at some point, that's going to go a different direction. But very limited amount ever minted in the whole history of the country. So, but again, if you look at what's coming out ahead for the country, there's this fight, and the fight is between this prior group, this deep state group that was very embedded in our government, in our business, that was moving our production capacity, stealing it really under political ruses and regulatory ruses, deindustrializing America and moving our productive capacity off to places where they could control it, where they could control the governments, where they could control the people, and literally starve us out and turn us into, a fourth world, country, not even a third world. And so that process of selling out America is being reversed. And this administration is taking the helm and doing that. And so I would bet on America. I would look for, I'd stick with stuff you personally know. One of my very good friends has a valve and pump company, and he wanted to sell out this year. And I, advise get it done. If you're going to do it, get it done early in the year. And he didn't make it in time. But he's decided to stick with it, and he's decided to stick with it for another 5 years. He's going to get through the election and through the rebuild that he sees coming in America. And he's also doing it. The other reason that I told him he needed to think again about it is because it's an American thing to do. It's a very everybody focused and, do what you know. And so as being an American, even though he kind of wanted to stop and sell out and retire, he's going to stick at it in part because he enjoys the challenge too. He enjoys, what he does, and he's very good at it. He's an expert at it. It'd be hard for the next guy to know all the little things. I suspect a year or two out there, somebody will want to buy him out, and he'll stick around an advisory position for a couple of years, and he'll get the deed done. He'll do better than he ever was going to do before. With the regulations off, the farming is going to increase massively. And that was one of the things I said, man, you're perfectly positioned in the farming community with these trade deals going on with China and other places, production coming back home. You've got a business that's done very well in those industries. Stick around, enjoy the ride. And he's decided to do that. There's lots of things here in the country that are going to need infrastructure that has been ignored. All they want to build is a brand new this, a brand new that, and a gazillion-dollar project that their buddies get to be in on and tear years down. But we still have a lot of infrastructure that has to be service, maintenance, repaired. And so we're going to see a lot of money dedicated to getting the country back on track, and energy and effort. I bet on America. I really would. And people are thinking about, look at the prices of stuff, and it's way down. You don't have to come in looking for a killing because you're probably just going to get fleeced yourself, but you can be pretty reasonable. Some reasonable bets, things that got beat down, just like the nanotech, that got beat down for reasons that had nothing to do with what was going on within the industry or the need for devices, products that they were well along in developing. And you turn around and look at what their future potential is as America comes back online. I don't think it's even what the projections were a year ago, with things being really good. I think it's 2 or 3 times what their reasonable projections were over the next 5 years. So, pick a lane, find a place. Water's great, jump in and enjoy it. But I wouldn't.
Dude,
the ones that were part of the trader crowd.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, look at the situation we're in. Money's never been cheaper, and energy's never been cheaper. And when you have those two culminations together, it only goes in one direction, my friend. And when you have regulations that have been cut the way they've been cut, it only heads to one direction, and that's going to be a massive economic boom, like I've been talking about for a while. You've been talking about it forever as well. W, real quick, shifting gears a little bit. Now we're hearing some moves, some murmurings coming out of the IMF. Do you want to touch base on that? And what are these banksters doing? Because look, for all those people that say that nothing's going on, let's recap real quick. Pedo networks have been going down. That is a fact, to the tune of tens of thousands of top-level individuals that are part of the human trafficking circles and networks have been taken out. They've been clipped. Mexican narcotics, okay, the cartels are being clipped as we speak, okay? Central banking is being clipped as we speak, okay? And when you have just the culmination of those 3 things alone, you're having the deep state wither on the vine, because that is the source blood. Their lifeblood to their global empire is those 3 components. They're withering on the vine. And now, W, we're hearing some murmurings out of the IMF. First, it was actually put out there as some sort of a fake thing by some communist-run website. But you got to understand where these communists are getting their marching orders from, the top levels. So the top levels are telling these useful idiots that this is coming. They put up a mock-up website about the IMF and all that other stuff. But then it is also starting to be confirmed by the IMF that, in fact, debt relief is coming. Things are moving. Look at the conversations that are starting to happen, and that is a big play there, W. So if you want to comment, go for it, buddy.
Well, yeah, it's a way of deflecting the real information from hitting the public. Oh, that's fake news.
Exactly.
So they said that all IMF debt to small countries was being forgiven, and then all of the remaining debt to the rest of the countries was being going to be renegotiated, and probably most of it was going to be forgiven. Well, let's just talk in a generic sense for a second. When countries, big or small, have debt to the IMF is using dollars. The IMF is tied into the Federal Reserve. It's a scam. It's part of these repeating boom bust cycles that they do. Throw money at a country like Greece like madmen, and then as soon as they get well committed, cut the money flow back off and start demanding your interest back. And then when they can't do it, you come in and buy all the land and the businesses and everything else for pennies on the dollar. And so it's the way these people have won this financial war to own the world for a very long time with these boom bust cycles. And they're the ones that can run the printing press, so they can buy anything they want. It's just paper. And so part of our problem is when they're pumping that money in. I'll use the Julian Assange. Julian Assange was being held there, or allowed to stay in the Ecuadorian embassy, and these people that wanted Assange to essentially be shut up and prosecuted because they know that he had more stuff to release, want to make their point in case anybody ever wants to double cross him again. And remember, the reason we have Donald Trump in office right now, I don't think it's actually arguable that the WikiLeaks release in the 2016 election cycle, forget Russia, that information about Pizzagate stuff, the communications with Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, that information was so shocking with the Maria Abramovich stuff, with the spirit cooking dinners, that it was a bridge too far for many Americans. And by the way, Microsoft released that thing on Good Friday with Maria Abramovich about virtual reality goggles and everything else, us having to self-distance. Remember, that was put together. That was prepared well before.
Way before.
The virus was even known going to be a problem. And they had a plan there. And they released it on schedule. It was not well received amongst the people because it was, these are people that are detestable. And the whole premise that they go by with their spirit cooking and everything else is detestable. It's gross. And that's not flyover America. That's normal America. They're trying to push their religion and values on us. So when we look at what's going on in the country and the way that this is being portrayed to us, we see that there's a need to rethink what's going to survive this and what isn't. And the things that are going to survive are going to be American things, American ideals, classic American ideals. That crowd, their way of working, their connections are going to get wiped off the map. And it's going to be a different focus as a country moving forward. So I lost my track a little bit there. I had something I wanted to say and I kind of lost it there. But anyway.
It's amazing to me that this whole, when you look at this, not only the Abramovich thing, but right now, Microsoft was roasted for putting that video out. Bill Gates has been officially canceled. As soon as he went out there, I mean, my God, the guy couldn't go nowhere without being totally attacked anywhere on the web, and nobody's buying his thing. The administration has said a couple of days ago, W, that they have rejected, and I've reported this here on Rogue as well as mostly on Patreon, I've reported that the administration has. Dr. Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General, has come forward and he has rejected outright the Fauci, Bill Gates, World Health model, okay, of where this disease is going. They outright rejected it and said, we're not going to use it no more. And we have real data, and we're going to go on the real data. And that's important because, look, New York, look at the state where I'm in, W, where they literally are padding the numbers. Okay, 3,700 cases of people that died who tested negative were added to the death roll to make it look bigger than what it is. And I've said it so many times. You go in for a broken thumb and you happen to drop dead from a communicable disease, which, year to date, 3.5 million people have died from communicable diseases just from January till today. Okay, if you die from a communicable disease, they will stamp on your death certificate in New York, COVID or equivalent. That's the word they use, COVID or equivalent. Why are they doing this? To pad the numbers, to make it look worse than what it is. Why? Because they've lost the narrative. And this blow that's been dealt, to Bill Gates and his vaccine agenda, a guy who makes the most shittiest operating system known to mankind that's virus prone, this dingbat is out there purporting vaccine cures.
Well, and again, part of the thing there is there was collusion with the CIA coordinating how those programs were set up and run, all the back doors that were engineered in there that kept getting leaked and loosed, etc. And NSA too. So that everywhere that stuff went, they had ways to get into it. And so there was a lot of collusion there and picking a winner. You wonder why other software companies couldn't make it, because they didn't realize they weren't just competing with Microsoft. They were competing with Microsoft and the CIA and all of their political connections, the machine, if you will. It wasn't an even playing field. You were playing against the deep state. And so you either went along with it and got bought out by it, or you got wiped out by it, either way. And that's the truth of what's going to be coming out over time. And that's this, a big part of this reset as a country. We'll still be doing, spy versus spy stuff in industry, but I don't think it's going to be the same game of insiders, skull and bones buddies trading off like trading cards, businesses and connections that they've co-opted and controlled. That's the whole story of the Epstein stuff. It was, you mentioned the child trafficking and stuff like that. Yeah, because Epstein was being used by Mossad, CIA, and British MI6 and 5 and FBI, by the way, as a tool for honeypots to capture and control people in their realm, to get them to do things that this deep state crowd wanted done, supposedly for national interests, national security interests. Now, it was for globalist interests. It was this underhanded crowd. The Skull and Bones guys, they work together for, helping the country politically, and these insiders know what's best for America, and they're working together in our best interests, and it's known and trusted, their secret little handshake crowd. No, fuck, it's about their own little club of people making sure that they get enriched and they protect their interests, moving towards a globalist one world control mechanism. And by the way, one world religion, the religion of Osiris, their Masonic religion, their Jesuit religion, their Kabbalist religion. At the very highest levels, they're not even different religions. It's a religion that's captured those other sites. You can't go into anywhere in politics around the world where there's not a captured component by this religious crowd. You can't go into any business realm around the world where there's not a captured component of that realm. And it's the same with the intelligence agencies. So we're fighting this monolithic giant secret handshake crowd, infiltration, not invasion. That's what Kennedy was explaining to people. That's what Eisenhower was explaining to people, that these people had captured the robes, captured the control of all these agencies from the inside out, and this hidden hand was controlling us. That's what Trump's fighting. That's what that picture was about. Trump juxtaposed against the Washington Monument, the deep state, the deep religious state, and we're capturing it back. I think that we're winning. Friends like the host I mentioned the other day, this thing, he's ready to go up against Trump and his judgment, and says, in on the bad guy stuff, and nothing's happening, and he's not waiting any longer, and it's all a LARP. He's given it as much time as he's going to give, and he's not going to be fooled again to give it any longer. FEMA's in control of the country. Really? Seriously? Come on, man. Take a deep breath. Are you really serious that the president doesn't have control of FEMA? And we've closed up the mountain there at Cheyenne, and it's he's going to lose. And the military is helping FEMA, and the country's going to go into total lockdown. Sounds like the Ebola thing that we talked about before. That's not what's happening here.
That's not what's happening at all. The alarmists.
Yeah. And if there's a delay, look, you have a component of this control mechanism over the world is in fact the pedophilia and child trafficking and worse. And I don't care if it takes took the rest of the summer to eradicate that crowd. I'll stay shut down as long as they decide to do it. And I'm not going to second guess the president. He has much better sources than we do on whatever that timing ends up being. But he's already indicated that he wants startup dates, and he wants us going back to work, and we're in that mode. And so anybody that says it's going to be staying shut down, the reality is you got some regional governments that for political reasons want to delay the startup as long as possible for political gain. And in those locations, I wouldn't be investing anything in companies that are located or have heavy asset production, vested interests in those locations. If you got a governor or local government that's going to fight the president on this restart, then I'd invest somewhere else. I wouldn't worry about getting in the fight. The local voters are going to have to decide how to deal with those people. And we're going to have a vote. We're going to have it out later in the year. One of the things I talked about is the whole Purim thing. And people don't understand Purim isn't a day only. The day that Haman was hung on his own petard, impaled on his own petard. He wasn't hung in the classic sense of a noose. At that time, they impaled him on a pole up high over this, whole area where you can see everything around him while he's bleeding out. But that was just the beginning. The whole Purim story is about that there was a date still out in the future, 6 months out in the future, and that was when it was a free-for-all for a day, this purge day. And the purge starts at sunset and goes through the next day's sunset. So, we have this purge day coming. It's called an election in our country, fortunately, and we're going to have it out. And we're going to see who's, the one that wins this. And we have all the time between now and then to have all these conversations. And so my buddies that want to say that Trump's done something wrong and lobby that he's screwed the whole country up with shutting us down. He's not bringing it back fast enough, that everything Q and everything related to the child pedophilia and breaking up those organizations is wrong. And we're not getting any of the gangs, and MS-13's stronger than ever. And the drugs are still coming in from China through Mexico and all that. Okay. We'll have many months now between here and then. And we'll see who wins that fight on election day. And I will tell you this. I don't think Trump is going to be passive between now and the election and making his case. He's pretty aggressive in defending himself because he can't get a fair shake in the media. Here he was talking the other day at the White House, and the headers running across the CNN stuff. Trump is making false statements and he's lying about this and that, and the fact checks show it's not true and everything else. Give me a break. Come on. And by the way, V, so one of the people pretty close to me said the other day, all through the 80s and 90s, you did not have a potty mouth. And now you say fuck and shithead, and I rail against these assholes that, how many of these people are going to die due to oxygen deprivation to the brain as a result of their cranial rectal inversions?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, come on, man. Get medical assistance and pull your head out of your fucking ass. You morons, wake the fuck up.
Amen. Okay? Very well said.
But at the end of the day,
I don't even think Gus could have said it better.
Well, fuck, it just drives me insane. And, so I said a bad word. Well, you got a whole fucking Capitol with a fucking dildo right out in the middle of it, and it's a religious rite. And you're upset with me because I said fuck, 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 fuck. That's what's right there in the middle of your capital. It's a religious city. That's their religion.
Exactly.
Go prove me wrong.
Yeah, the whole damn city is arrayed like a pentagram, and we're worried about a few words that at the end of the day don't mean shit.
It just, and they're laughing at you because they're putting a big fuck you right in the middle of the capital of the whole country, fucking the whole country over. And then you're worried about whether or not I said fuck. Well, fuck you. Give me a break. Get your head out of your ass, realize what's going on, and get in the fight.
And we have over 500 people listening onto this live, and they're loving it.
When you're in combat, you're a little more right to
honest, raw, real.
Raw, yes, because lives are on the line. Come on, man. I'm serious. I'm actually very, very serious here.
No, it's true, man. Dude, it's like I have more of a trust and honesty with somebody that could be raw and versus somebody who's so damn pent up and wound tight and doesn't see a single bad word. That's the guy I worry about.
Well, because it's this staged presentation to keep the grandmas happy and comfortable and everything else, and then it's a type of porn in itself, that you're not being real about the effects of what these people are doing to the country.
Sure, absolutely.
We don't talk about bad things that are happening to kids that these people might be involved in, because
speaking about the kids, you want to touch base on the kids, and then then we could switch gears and talk about the deep underground military bases, the DUMBs, and a lot of the activities that's been happening there, buddy. Holy shit.
Well, the only thing I want to say there, look, we're not getting the data on what precisely is going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go out there and say stuff based on just, I've got pretty good sources and I'm pretty comfortable about where things are at. But, it hasn't been said in any official capacity. And so, I'll leave that for when the administration decides that they want to talk about that stuff and what's real and what's somebody's, wild speculation. They'll say something when they're good and well ready. And in the meantime, I think I'll just hold my water. I have certain perspectives on that, but I'll hold my water on it. But I believe that things are happening there. This crowd that we're opposing has certain religious practices involving blood and blood products, which come predominantly from children, that it's not a far reach to understand what they're doing and what they're capable of. So I think that we'll know the truth on a lot of this stuff, and probably sooner than later. But how long is sooner? I'm not gonna second guess. What's reasonable and logical. Um, if they decide they don't want to say something in any official capacity, for a year, okay, well, I'm not going to second guess them. The administration is where it's at, and they're making their decisions within their best knowledge and advice. I can guarantee you that the president would love to tell you everything that would make him look favorable this instant. Okay, he would love to toot his own horn, and justifiably so. But he's holding back. Why? Because there's stuff still at stake, and it's not about him. And you got a lot of people out there that would say that I don't know what I'm talking about. It is all about him. Well, the other thing I want to say, use your fucking head. Okay, look, if he hadn't run, if he just continued with his business stuff, like my buddy that's wanted to sell his pump and valve company and just enjoy his retirement and had that all planned out, the president could enjoy the fruits of his labors. He was in a pretty good spot. Don't risk anymore. Just let the cash flow, enjoy the grandkids, and have life. You got your own son, beautiful wife, all the toys, every place to go. Enjoy it. Why would you take this on? And he's under the control of the deep state, and he's part of the plan to take down the world. Okay. All right. I know that there's bad people out there. You could say the same thing about, for example, Gates, and who was made and created in this whole thing, who is acting pretty over the top, off the charts on a lot of this stuff, and is being vilified. His daughter's getting ready to get married there in Egypt shortly, and to a horse riding friend. And, you'd think that he'd be wanting to enjoy this section of his life too, but there's all sorts of bizarreness out there that make you wonder, is Trump that nutty too? Yeah, you can probably make a case for that, but that's not really what's going on here. He got in the fight for the very reasons that he stated, because he could see that the country was going in a direction that wasn't going to be preserved for his kids, that his grandkids would have an honest future. And so he got into it to, help the country and help all the other parents and kids. And he was in a position to do it. Nobody out there in the political arena or even business arena would be capable of taking the endless hits that he has and come through it. It's part of that New Yorker personality too, to take the caustic and just flip it right back on them. That is his trademark in many ways. And the way he manages those news conferences, just, beautiful to behold. So with that in mind, is he sold out? Well, if you believe so, okay. I'm not even going to argue with you at this point in time. Okay. We're going to have a purge day. That's going to be election day, 11/3. They love their 311s and 11/3s. They're 33s. It's part of the cult. It's their power number. It's our authority and all that. Well, if we're going to flip them out of power forever here in the country, that's a perfect day to do it. Kick them on the ass, kick them in the keister, send them down the road. And don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out, heading back to England. And your cult too. But that's out in the future, and you're going to get a chance to vote. You're going to have enough information. I'm sure the administration is going to give you enough information to make a decision. And by the way, I know what it was. I didn't finish a minute ago. So when Assange, he was, they decided that suddenly, for political reasons, they weren't going to allow him to domicile there at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. They allowed him to be taken away and put into prison there in England. What happened the next day for Ecuador? The IMF gives like a $10 billion, grant to Ecuador for financial assistance. Oh, really? So who paid the bribe to be able to get Assange, who flipped the election in 2016 with releasing his material over at WikiLeaks? Who paid for that? That was our money through IMF buddies to do a political payoff to get Assange out. They've been using it against us. So out into the future, what's happening is that the cash flow to the IMF from the Federal Reserve, now that Federal Reserve operations have been moved under Treasury Authority, the banksters, the governing board, they can vote the fuck whatever they want. But at the end of the day, there's going to be an overriding authority, executive authority down through the Secretary of the Treasury to nip that in the bud and get it going the right direction. Essentially, the early stages or end run effect of nationalizing the Fed, bringing back under U.S. control, because the Fed is no more federal than Federal Express, in which also, by the way, neither is the IRS. The IRS courts have found that the IRS is a Puerto Rican corporation. I've said that numerous times. I'm hammering it in people's heads.
That is
so
fact.
Why?
It was all incorporated. The head guy that's in charge of all this, unknowingly, the officer that handles all the filings of the paperwork for that is the Transportation Secretary of the island of Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Well, it was Philippines before that, by the way.
Yeah.
And was moved to Puerto Rico at a certain point in time. That's why we had to have a Marcos in there and things like that. So, this is a scam. It's a globalist scam. It's a internationalist scam. And that's why they've done these actions against America, against Donald Trump. The dossier was concocted on foreign soil. The conspirators, the co-conspirators, the ones that Durham is getting close to taking action on, that will hopefully alleviate some of the pressure and stress. When are they going to do something? When they're going to be arrested? It's coming. You can bet your last dollar on it. I'll bet anybody in this audience that you're going to see Comey in jail, and it won't be when I'm 97. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. You're going to see Brennan behind bars, that piece of shit.
Well, look at. I mean, you've had your run-ins with that character anyway, man, if I'm not mistaken. But look at where Durham's. These are criminal indictments, man.
Yeah,
these are criminal indictments. These are the criminal subpoenas have gone out, man.
Well, ultimately, because these crimes took place to subvert and overturn a federal election, and they were concocted, they were orchestrated from foreign shores with foreign persons, U.S. persons and foreigners working together. They really are things that fall within the purview of a military tribunal. And so Gitmo is not a far reach. And there's a lot of people that, they have all their questions. I don't have to, go wander out in the weeds, what they think are the weeds on that stuff. At this point in time, I think one of the things for this audience that's actually an important feature, there's a certain point in business negotiations, conversations, even family things, arguing with the husband, arguing with the wife. There's a certain point you just stop. Everything's been said. Just going to have to wait. Nobody's going to agree. That's fine. Let's see how it works out. Right now, I'm more than comfortable, satisfied to kind of not say anything more, relax, let it play through. I have a lot of confidence in where we're at, how the game has progressed. The news, just like, I don't see any children risk. I don't see any, everybody's talking about their tunnels.
Yeah, because they're going to show it live on the air. Right.
Yeah, right. Helicopters over the site. Look, the reality is we've taken out Epstein, And when those kind of investigations go on and they have a little time to percolate through and they identify other locations and people and everything else, um, it may not look like anything's happening behind the scenes. These kinds of cases take time, and other stuff comes up and people talk. Look at the Nexium stuff, and all the revelations that have happened in there. It's a lot more than people realize.
It's too
The same,
connected, man. You know what
and
the whole thing. You know what I think, W, that people don't get. Look, here's the deal. This is look. One of the things that I do well is follow the money. And when you look at the massive hundreds of millions of dollars that were spent, possibly billions, I'm sorry, not hundreds of millions, but tens of billions of dollars that has spent preventing this man from taking office, beginning the operations that were trying to oust him. Not just one operation, but multiple operations, weaponizing both the media and all the institutions to go up against him. Folks, this is not business as usual. You just simply don't do that for optics. You don't do that for theater. You do that when the system detects a credible threat. What don't people understand that? That's the thing that sticks out to me the most, W. That's what made me take a look and be like, yo, you might not believe on this whole Q thing and all this other stuff, but here's the deal, right? I've been said many times, I'm not like I'm indifferent towards it. But one thing I cannot deny is there's something happening here. One thing I cannot deny when I start talking to people that are way smarter than I am, okay, and they believe this stuff, and when I start looking at the simple mathematics of it and figure out, hey, mathematically, this is impossible. All these things for what? A psyop? All the hundreds of billions of dollars spent trying to overturn an election? The tens of billions spent on the media, knowing it's a losing battle, knowing that profits are being eviscerated, knowing ad revenue is going down the toilet, but yet throwing in hundreds and tens of billions of dollars media-wise, trying to stop one man? Why? Why do all of this? Unless, of course, the answer is staring you in the face, that whatever this man, Donald J. Trump, is bringing with him is something that is so subversive to the status quo, something so dangerous to the status quo, that they need to stop him. That's the only logical conclusion, man. Good.
Well, let me just dive right in there. One of the things it really upsets me, actually. It's one of the few things I get really, really, really ticked about. Is there's a lot of people that they have no their ability to analyze is again of oxygen deprived because of where their head is. The Q operation has been kind of a gamer thing. It was aimed at young people, gamers, people that do video game challenges, etc. That's what was over there at the HAN and Forcoon and all that. This was kind of a communications location where people find out how to get past a level in the game, what certain things were happening. And it was a way of communicating those tricks to get ahead in video games. And so they had these back channel conversations amongst other things, and it was kind of fun anonymously. And why is that important? Because with what was going on with the Q thing, it was aimed at a younger audience primarily. Grandpa wasn't going into the Chans and communicating with a bunch of other grandpas, in their last weeks on the job before they retired. And grandmas weren't around the card table going through the computers and sharing tricks on how to win at cribbage. Okay, it was aimed at a younger crowd, a much younger crowd. But the breadcrumbs that were put out there, the cheese that was put out there, these kids get a little thing, and it's FBI anon, and then it's QAnon, etc. Putting out information that caused these people to go off and do these searches, this investigation, this take the time to learn things. because they found it and they owned it, about how the world works, how the politics works, who the various players are. Go find the pictures. It was an egg hunt and mouse hunt, and they learned this stuff. These people are now, several years into this project. They've learned a tremendous amount, and by the way, a lot of them are not kids anymore. They're not even playing those games anymore. They're having their first kid. They're getting a solid job. They're out of college. Others that were in their 20s, they're closing on their 30s. And they're suddenly getting a different life and understanding their perspective out in the world. They're growing up in this era. As we move forward, it's not even just about this next election. Who are the people that are going to step in? Where's the person on the horizon right now who's going to step in? God help us, President Trump is elected for a second term. We get 4 more years of good, strong action and health, 100% effort like he's been doing all the way along. But who's in the wings to step forward to be the next president? There's, what, we're going to have a dynasty now. It's going to have to be one of his kids, and they're going to have to. So we're just going to have all the weight, all the responsibility thrown onto a family. It's just another political dynasty, and this is the next guru, and we're going to anoint him. Fuck! Give me a break.
Correct.
Get your head out of your fucking ass. Listen to me. It's not about finding another guru. It's about everybody waking up and taking responsibility. Grow up. We don't want a dynasty. We don't want another bloodline foisted on us. I don't want somebody there just because they're related to somebody else. I can tell you lots of fantastic businessmen, men and people who I wouldn't do business with their kids at all. Not for 1 second. Not because I don't like them, not because I don't trust them, because they don't have the kind of business sense or political sense that's what their parent has or their grandparent has. And it's not even a slight on them. Some people have it. Some people have other lanes, and it's not their zone. So it's not about just anointing the next one because they're related to so-and-so, and I'm so in love with the marketing of that person, and they're so beautiful, and they're just right in the way they talk. You know what? Please get over it. This is not hero worship. This is not another knighted the next one because they're so wonderful and I'm in love with the image of who that person was. No, what I want is a whole country full of communities where there's another Trump all over the place who've grown up in this, and they're never going to get caught with their pants down around this crowd again and to get fucked in the ass by these assholes. Okay? Because that's what they're doing. That's really literally what they're doing. If you're not offended by that, you don't understand. That's what they're doing. And they're putting their symbology right in the Capitol, at the center of the Capitol, and laughing at you because you can't see it. You're blind to the biggest monster in the world right there in your Capitol. You don't even want to understand that it's a religion, that Washington, D.C. is more religious city than the Vatican. And you're oblivious to it. Well, I don't want to hear people talk like that. I don't want to think like that. That's not nice. That's not the way we talk around here. Oh yeah, but your actions, you condone it. You're not stopping it. You're making your kids live through it, just like your parents did because they put up with it because they didn't understand it. Because nobody said it. Because decent people don't talk about that kind of fucked up stuff. They don't they don't look that deeply at an Epstein because, I don't know what those girls were doing, but, they were doing it. They were willing. So, I mean, they were there. Hilltop Air Force Base there in Hollywood, and CAA, California Academy of Artists. It's harder to get into CAA than it is the Pentagon. That's one of the people was talking about here the other day. Yeah, why? Because they're controlling what you hear in the media. It's literally a propaganda operation to control the minds, not just of Americans, but of the whole world. The way we view the world as portrayed through the media, through the actors, through the movies we get to see, tainted a certain way.
What you said is so poignant, and I want to refresh everybody's memory. People are like, well, what do we do? Well, let me explain to all of you what you do. Remember what Franklin said? It's a republic if you can keep it. And remember what our founding father said, that this republic, this form of government is for a what? For a what? A vigilant and morally upright population. Personal responsibility. Civic responsibility. People need to rediscover that. That is the one thing they need to rediscover. Personal responsibility, civic responsibility, and to be vigilant. Because the cranial rectal syndrome that many people are under for the last several decades is why we're in this mess to begin with. So if there's anybody to blame in here, folks, it's us. Go ahead, W.
Well, you get the government that you work for, earn, and deserve. So if you were busy doing your own thing and trusting, government to do the right thing, and we have judges and prosecutors to, get these cases taken care of with CPS and everything. And so we just kind of, I don't know, we don't want to get involved as a church or whatever. We don't do things politically. Yeah, because you're 501c3. Then you get the government you work for, earn, and deserve. And you didn't work for controlling your government. You didn't earn a good government. You deserve what you got. And I'm just telling you that this community that's built up around the Q operation, that have educated themselves, that have come to understand, I apologize, had a vehicle going by, that have come to understand what is going on here, that have educated themselves about the Podestas and their religious viewpoints and their spirit cooking meals and the art portraying children, in very desperate situations. The pizza stuff, which is real, and it's gonna come out. You can blow that off all you want. Okay, well, I'm not even gonna argue with you at this point. Okay, you have a different viewpoint. I do too. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see who's right. It might not be in a month, might be a year, but it's not going to be years. And you're gonna these things are gonna find a certain momentum. And let me finish this, V. So the point is that we have to understand that in this moment in time, this group that's growing up around the Q project is far more educated than a lot of the people in their 40s, 50s, 60s on this subject. They got a lot of, they were there first, and they've educated on stuff, on the Q stuff. A lot of people came in late to the game, but they're catching up pretty quick, and they're understanding this stuff, and they're self-educating. And that's the beauty of the Q operation. We'll know if the Q operation worked if, when it's over with, people are less concerned with finding out who Q is. Who's Q? I'm going to prove that the president is Q. I'm going to prove these other people were involved in the Q project. I know it. Well, then you've missed the whole point. You've lost your way. That's not what it's all about. At the end, if we all identify as being Q, Q didn't just send us. We are Q because
Yeah.
we understand these issues. And we're all that kid by the side of the road. If you're looking for some, guru or savior, born again to save us, like, a good patriot version of Osiris resurrected from the dead, then you're missing the point. This is about us here alive right now, taking on this coat, this jacket, this identity of all being the people that grew up in the shadow of those events when the coup happened to take down a president. These people had been involved in this, working this systematically for a very long time, for decades. They'd wiped out leaders before it was a president. It was a whole boatload of our best and brightest American businessmen, so they could take over our economy through the creation of the Federal Reserve and through buying off some politicians on a Christmas Eve Easter egg to give us the Federal Reserve and enslave us and put us in wars and depression. How many millions of people died, not just because of the war, but because of the depressions and losing their farms and their inheritance to these bankster fraudsters who stole our land and our businesses with their manufactured depressions and manipulation of the markets. To get that back, to wrestle it away, it wasn't just about Kennedy, it was about Lincoln before him. He was trying to do it with the greenbacks, our own currency. We're not going to do this with this European bullshit, these monarchists trying to control us. The beauty, the genius of the Q project is that we all take on those identities. That's the whole point. It's the Guy Fawkes mask.
It's like the scene from V for Vendetta.
Becomes that person and understands that's what's going on. And if you don't get that, then you're not paying attention. You got your head up your ass. Okay.
Right.
We all take that position. If we identify a certain way, that's because we all understand we're all the kid by the side of the road, observing. We were all affected growing up in the shadow of those events. Everybody in your audience, V, was personally affected very darkly to the core, still living under the effects of that coup. And the Q operation, where a Q is boot stamped over President Kennedy's grave. We got you and we're keeping you. The reality is, and by the way, the torch at the Statue of Liberty, that's actually a penis. And the torch at the Kennedy grave, they're having their little ISIS joke inside the big O Q. We're going to flip that fucking thing around. We're going to kick them in the ass and get them the hell out of here. Get their religious rights out of our capital. Move the capital if we have to. We're not going to be ruled and reigned by them with their religious symbology and number symbology and celestial alignment, voodoo and stuff like that. It's not going to happen overnight. But I believe a new generation is growing up. And as we do that and take control of our country back, and we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to be fooled that way anymore. That's going to be very prosperous for America, and then we can lead the world. But this is a battle that's going to go on. You think it's over, at the election? No, we're in a battle for the rest of our lives to get to a superior position and own it, and not give up that position, and then root these people out everywhere in the world they show up to, win by just being strong and to bleed them down. So when we stop their flow of money with IMF money to control governments, how much more control is our government from here going to have when we're not competing with our own money being used against us with IMF to Ecuador to do their bidding for a globalist thing? When they're not getting that IMF money, and we say, well, you want some help and you want to get things going and you want to do some, infrastructure and all that. And we're not going to let your, people bleed off over into our country and send money home, just come across the border like you own the place. You want to work with us? We'll help you out. We'll give you a hand up, but you're going to do it on our terms. And we're not going to, you're not going to have to go, well, but the IMF says they'll give us this. And if you're not going to, if you're going to put those strings on it, we don't want to do it with you. We'll do it with the IMF. We'll do it with the World Trade Organization. We'll do it with some other outside group that's being funded by a bunch of crooked politicians, just like the crooked politicians got us the Fed, got us the IRS, got us all this other stuff. We're not going to have to compete with ourselves with traders from within, because we're rooting them out, and they're not going to get right back in power and place easily. So is it a bright future for America? Yeah, it's going to be a different future. And the people in this audience, this Q community who's educated, who now gets it, they're going to be pivotal in this rebooting of America without all these shenanigans. And we got to take on the world. Well, we'll take on the world. You develop a space force and see if you can't steal our technology, if you can't get our politicians and business people to give you third stage rocketry over there in China for free. Buy a 747 and get missile technology thrown in for free. Fuck you. You're going to have to do it yourself. We're not going to help you by giving it to you. We'll compete on an even playing field. And I guarantee you, this generation that's growing up right now, take the chocks off of the wheels here in America, the whole world will be challenged to keep up with us in a very positive way. I'm going to bet on America, and I'm going to bet on the Q people. It's not just about a person. That Q community. If I was screening for a job for employees, one of the questions I'd ask going out in the future: what do you know about Q? What do you know about the Q team? What do you know about the Q operation? And if a guy is willing to tell me, well, I know this or that or some other thing, if I ask some little nugget within the Q thing that's sort of rudimentary, and I get a little bit of an idea there and there, that'd probably be a qualifier to me that's somebody I want working around me, because they understand the project. And if they were to tell me I'm Q, and I hope you are too, I'd be hiring them in an instant. I don't want some bullshit artist. Oh, I'm Q and I've done everything all by myself. I've been doing it in grandma's basement, all my stuff. Fuck you. What a moron. You got a few people out there trying to pass themselves off as Q. This is AI,
of course.
Supercomputer stuff. But I mean, in a generic sense, that they've taken.
And you want to know something, W?
Role.
Like W, real quick. You're looking at this whole COVID thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that got my attention, and look, I'm a major skeptic of a lot of things. But one thing that got my attention, man, is when I was reading some of these posts from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 2018 March. And it was literally like I'm reading the play-by-play of what the hell is happening today, right now, March of 2020, April 2020. Crazy. Like, this has to be some sort of an advanced supercomputer mixed with highly intelligent people with some advanced algos and some serious AI. It's incredible. It's mathematically impossible, man.
Well, let me just add this. This attack had been in the planning for quite a while. It was one of the options. My contention is that they had intended to do this last year, and the materials were confiscated there at the Guatemalan Cultural Center by two NEST teams that went in and brought those items out of the Cultural Center last year, just before the State of the Union, and there on Wilshire Boulevard. The 11.3.311 stuff, again, remember, this is a religion, and they believe that they get power by working things, telling you what they're going to do in advance, right out in the open. And so they use media to do that. CAA, what's the significance of CAA? C, the letter 3. Third letter of the alphabet. AA, first letter of the alphabet. So 311. 311, yeah. And what day did Tom Hanks say he had coronavirus? 311.
311.
What did he talk about in the Golden Globes? He talked about
at 3 a.m. and 11 p.m.
That's right. So he's talking about this 311 and stuff gets out of the lab. You got to get the freaking inoculation.
You got to take the shot.
Yeah,
I take one at 11 p.m. and at 3 a.m.
And a year ago, what happened at the Golden Globes a year ago? Same thing. They had the thing where they said, well, we were going to have pizza, but you're all going to the after parties and blah, blah, blah. So we decided to have everybody get a shot. So they have people coming out giving everybody, offering to give them a shot. But if they don't want a shot, they got to throw a napkin over their head, which is symbolic of the eating of the ortolan bird, the death of an innocent. There's a guy out there that did just a fantastic video talking about the ortolan bird. And by the way,
which is gruesome, by the way.
Yeah, it's horrible. And by the way, the last meal of Francois Mitterrand in France, 96, was served by one of these chefs from the Cannibal Club in California. Talks about it on their website. And she served him ortolan bird for his final meal, his last meal, like a last rites. And it's this decadent death of innocence meal for this president. You don't think this is a religious cult? Yes, it is. And so you come to this situation with Corona. What's the thing? Tom Hanks likes to collect his Corona typewriters. Well, what about Hanks likes to spell it with the last letter of his name with an X? What's Madonna do? Madam X. And what did she do last year on her album? Her album, the back cover, has the Corona typewriter, and the only words you can read on the letter that she's hand typed out with the Corona typewriter that's visible right there in the back of her album is, bringer of light. Well, that's Lucifer, light bringer.
Exactly.
And
you see her recent Twitter video, her Instagram video,
on, where she was add one thing. I want to say this while it's in context. Last year, when she was releasing her new album, she does a concert in Israel, and the video's out there for people to see. So Madonna's concert in Israel, of all places. And what's the setting? She's talking about, only some of us are going to make it. Most of us are going to die. It's one of her lead songs in the album. And then all of the people on the stage with her are wearing gas masks. And people are dying all over the stage. And this is this song that's the cover for her Corona typewriter thing. Who knew what? This was not an accident. This was not. Somebody somewhere that was orchestrating behind the scenes. And I'm not saying it was necessarily that Madonna knew, but somebody was, orchestrating things to get certain ideas out in the public to push certain things. And those guys, that are managing how the media presents stuff and who's a winner and who's a loser, who gets the next contract, the next album, etc., and how the albums are laid out. Those guys have a lot of influence over the public's mindset and conditioning and preconditioning. It was just, Corona typewriter and Corona virus. I mean, I don't know, I don't know what happened there. It's kind of a, it's just, it is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue. Bull fucking shit. Anyway, go ahead, V.
The Instagram video that she put out like maybe a week ago, and it's on a Corona typewriter, and the camera is panning through each letter as she's stopping by the letter. And when you spell it out, it spells out stop Q.
Well,
come on.
And for those people that think that there's not trolling going on, what's part of the deal with the trolling? Hello, and they're trying to figure out, get Q, get this, that. She's had Juan in several of her things because they see that message as a problem, a threat. And by the way, there's certain themes that have been kept out there for a reason. And if you don't get it, then you're a fucking asshole and an idiot. Of what's said and what's left on the table, that's for people to do their understanding, their investigation, to understand and understand the real reason. And those that get distracted on the wrong bullshit, they may, get some headway for a day, but, the ground at some point will crumble underneath them because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. We'll leave that for down the road.
Very well said, man. Very well said. Anything else you want to cover?
Well, you wanted to mention about the, I just want to finish on the gangs.
Sure.
We touched on that a couple of times. One of the big scourges on America, I hate drugs. I hate the way it damages people, ruins their life, ruins the lives of people around them. It cooks them. I have somebody in very close to me that really was permanently damaged by meth that I still care for today. And I have a very, very well-known person, everybody in the audience would know him, who has a relative who was damaged by drugs 30 years ago. And as a young person, straight A student, their entire life, full ride ticket on a basketball scholarship to, top university. And between a senior year and college, was doing an exhibition basketball thing. And the other guys cowed him into smoking essentially a tainted drug. It screwed with his septum in his brain and blew it apart in a way that he's never recovered from. So they've had to take care of him the rest of his life. This is a person that would have been a genius, business person, would have succeeded at anything he did, had high aspirations. Everybody around him knew he'd never done any of this. And they had to, get him to go along and cow him into it, in part because that's how they get these guys hooked on the drugs and the money and everything else. And then they can get them to throw games, etc. And that's what they were really trying to do, is get him set up so they could manage him from a mob side. And he's just a dumb farm kid, hasn't been exposed to this big city mentality and just wasn't mentally prepared for those kinds of shenanigans. And unfortunately, it destroyed his life. So they still care for him today. He's a nice enough guy, but he can't weave 3 sentences together. A year ago, there in the Port of Long Beach, at the same time we were getting the stuff on Wilshire Boulevard at the Guatemalan Cultural Center that would have been the real version of the coronavirus that really would have hurt a lot of people, shut the country down. They also seized enough fentanyl to kill every person in North America, US and Canada. Every person. Enough fentanyl in one drug seizure. Where did it come from? It came out of China. Who was going to distribute it? Mexican gangs. And that's not a threat to the country. So
and MS-13.
MS-13, the Jalisco gang on the west coast of Mexico, a half dozen other gangs, the Venezuelan gangs moving it across over to the Ivory Coast and up from Africa into Europe. These groups are being gone at systematic. Oh, nothing's happening. I don't see any arrests. I don't see anything happening. Nothing's going on. Well, then you're an idiot, man. Come on. But okay. I'm not even going to waste oxygen on you anymore. This is the moment where within this community, this crowd, I think we just have to, if people want to pick a side, pick a lane, you want to go that road, you want to act like the president's not getting anything done. Okay. I'm not going to argue with you. We'll see what happens, and we're going to have an election. And, I'm glad to talk with you about this stuff. You don't want to hear it. It's painful for you. You want to argue with me about it. I'm not even interested in arguing it anymore. You want to argue about, who's the next guru that's going to save the world, save the country, or even portray themselves as it, then you're not paying attention to what this conversation is. We're all growing up at the same time. We all grew up in the shadow of these events, these coups to control us as a people, and we're not having any more slaves, no fucking more. And the drugs, this administration is cutting off the drug supplies into the country, and he's taking out all these drug suppliers and distributors. We're rebooting America without them. And we're going to cut it off not just on the streets here in the US, but at the head, offshore, where China's been working with these gangs to infiltrate America and to get their stuff into America, to weaken America, to win by infiltration, to win at this fifth column level, degrading America, degrading our next generation with drugs, ruining their minds and their lives, and holding everybody else back because they don't function well, because they're dealing with family members, people around them that are crippled by drug addiction and drug use and permanently damaged by that. And by the way, that includes trying to get us on their latest stupid ass vaccine that isn't actually doing anything but cooking our brains and damaging our children's brains. I think that fight is in here too, and that's going to happen also. And it's going to, this Coliquine thing, we're going to go back and relook at everything and who the players are that have pushed certain things, who the companies are that are pushing certain things for their internal benefit, for their money, but aren't really helping us, and in many cases hurting people and damaging our population, damaging our workforce, damaging our brain trust. And as we throw these yokes off, as we burn these people's houses down, their criminal enterprises down, and the manipulative honeypot operations like Epstein and the Playboy Underground stuff that you haven't even fully heard about yet, with Bill Maher and his wizardry through Hollywood and the Sanctum crowd, which is 100 times worse than NXIVM ever was. We're going to cut that off, and it's going to be health and healing to the country. Bet on America. That's happening. And if you don't believe so, and you don't see evidence, all right, I'm moving forward, and you can go sit on the grass over there as an observer and just watch it. I'm going to be part of helping the country rebuild, just like my friend deciding to stay in there, keep his pump company, and go through this next growth stage. He's buying new trucks right now. That's where he left this morning to go do, is go down and order some new trucks in the middle of this time period. And he knows that he's got some money in the bank. He's not going to go cower, waiting to see what's going to happen if America's going to come back. He's going to order new trucks. It'll take 4 to 6 months for them to be built. And about the time the country's coming back, he'll be having new trucks delivered. Yep. And he'll be ahead of all the competition. And if you've decided to bet on America, you'll be ahead too. And you don't have to do something wild or weird, or that's one thing too. When things are down like this, you don't have to do a huge bet everything. You can find ways to participate and be part of what's happening, and do it as an American civic duty to be part of putting America back together again and getting on track. That's what I would say. And everybody taking on, we're all that kid by the side of the road. We're all Q. We all grew up in the shadow of these events, and we're not going to be slaves anymore. And we're not kids, by the way, anymore. We're adults. We're parents. We're grandparents, and we get it. And if some of the Q kids got it a little bit earlier and paved the way, and we decided to figure this stuff out, and now we get it, good. I told my buddy, I said, you got to find some guys that follow the Q stuff. That ought to be your new employees. You're going to hire them. Those are the ones that are going to be the sharpest, the brightest, that understand, that are going to be, that understand where you're trying to go as a company. And we had to laugh. And he says, I think you're right.
No, it's true, man. It's I mean, my God, the amount of data, it's remarkable. It really is remarkable. I think it's a level of I mean, geez.
Well, and that's the thing. We're moving industry, production, capacity back here. The world's going to be beating a path to our door to try and be in on it, to help us to get it there in their places. Those that want to work with us, great. Those that want to work with whatever's left of the IMF and these international globalist conspirators, hey, go for it. We'll have a fair competition. We'll kick them in the ass. We'll grind them in the ground. They won't even stand a chance. You're going to compete with our Space Force? You morons. You know, pick a side. Yeah.
I'm all in, baby. Team America.
That's right.
I'm all in. You ain't got to convince me, man. I've been preaching this for at least the last 2 or 3 years that we're gonna come back. It's not gonna be the crashing into the mountain destruction that would have happened if we had the war goddess, that piece of crap, Hillary, elected.
Well, okay. I got to say this. I'm glad you said that. Okay. Imagine, just do a mental exercise. What would it be like? Because these things were planned. They were in play for many, many, many years to be foisted on us, probably sooner than this, but ultimately right now or sooner in this administration. How would a Hillary have dealt with each stage of these events, or a Pelosi or Congress or whatever? Would they have just let the country go on, like Fauci said, yeah, go ahead and keep the border open to China and keep planes coming in and people coming in till everybody's infected and the system is really overwhelmed with these infections? And then what would they have done? Instead of a controlled stop, braking under control, your ABS, automatic braking system working to keep you from spinning out and sliding and crashing and everything else, they'd have done a full-on brake stop. All aircraft grounded within 4 hours. Wherever you're at, you're going to have to stop where you're at. I don't care if you're in Australia or New Zealand or Alpha Centauri. Nobody can come or go. The chaos within the country, the chaos within the communities. And then they'd have had their trucks going out and, well, we don't have COVID tests, but we listen to them, cough in the bag. Okay, yep, nope, you got it. Well, did you do a test? Yeah, I did a test. You coughed and you've got it. They'd be carting us off like crazy. You'd be stuck in the underground Walmarts. And if you didn't have it to begin with, you'd all be there in the freaking room, 1,000 in a room with, a 500 capacity. And within a day or two, you'd all have it. And they'd have been thinning the population that way. All of these important decisions, making decisions for America. We're in a national emergency and we're shutting America down and we won't be able to restart for 18 months. And by the time you get done, who hasn't died of it because we didn't have anything to take care of it? We didn't have enough incubators or intubators or whatever that we needed. Respirators, anything. At the end of the day, we'd have been in a radically worse condition. Critiquing President Trump as though he went the wrong way, I think they're going to have a hard time winning that battle in the most important place there is, the vote on 11/3 of 2020. That's our Purim day. That's our purge day. That's the other side of the whole Purim thing. And we're going to have it out. It's one day. You feel differently. You think he's done it all wrong. You want to get all of your buddies to, work with you to take him out because, never Trump all the time, because you'd have preferred Jeb Bush. You'd have preferred Hillary Clinton. You'd have preferred Bernie. Okay, that's fine. I'm not even upset with you. If you see it that way, that's fine. There's a cure for the coronavirus. I don't know that there's a cure for stupid. And once the problem with people suffering from cranial rectal inversion, you only have so long before you run out of oxygen. And then there's permanent brain damage. And you can even get your head extracted out of your ass, but the brain damage is permanent if you're still alive. Get your head out of your ass while there's still time, while you still have something left of a brain. And stop listening to these shit for brains idiots that you were listening to because you were under a spell, under some kind of wizardry orchestrated by Fifth Avenue types working with Hollywood types to control the way you think and see the world. Make a change, grow up, join us, get in. The water is fine. Go back to your roots as an American, and let's get this done. Purge day is coming.
Exactly. My friend, thank you for joining us again, man. Truly remarkable, truly exciting. Loved it. People love it. It's been just bombastic to have you on. Just amazing. And folks, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you comment. Make sure that you share this with your friends and family. Get the word out there. Get the word out there. Things are being done. And like I said, look, I'll be honest with you, W. If no arrests ever happened, but the fact is, let's just not even talk about arrests, but the fact is that central banking is being clipped, drug cartels are being clipped, human traffickers are being clipped, borders are being secured, regulations are being cut, trade deals are getting done. My God, for a gorilla like myself, that's paradise, bro.
Yeah, we're on the right path, and I appreciate all those people that have kind of stuck with us through this. And I know it's been a long, thing. Just this was more of a cheerleading broadcast than presenting a lot of new stuff. And I do have something that I do want to present, but I'm a little bit hesitant to do it for the moment. I'll do it shortly when I think that we've reached the right moment. But sometimes you just need to have a rah-rah cheer session. Come in at the halftime and kind of think about where we're at, and people are getting beat up by all their friends about whether or not things are happening fast enough and all that. Suck it up, take a deep breath. We're in the game. We're doing great, and let this continue to come to us. Don't worry, we're not going to push on a string. We're not going to waste time with those people that don't get it. If they join us and they get it, great. If they don't, we're moving on. We're there at that point in time. The reboot's in place and happening, and let's go have some fun.
Absolutely. Very well said. And with that being said, folks, we're at the end of the program. Hit the subscribe button. Please hit that subscribe button. It helps us with the trending and all that other good stuff. Hit the comment, like, and share. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're alerted the next time that W, a.k.a. Juan07, is back on the show with us. And I want to thank all of you for listening in. With that being said, hopefully CJ's still here. CJ, take it away. I think we're still live. CJ. I have to call CJ. Oh, there he is. Take it away, CJ.